Hide the money, y'all. There's poor people around. Which are broken.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. Happy Thursday. I am Brandon Olsen. I loved getting to do that little open just because the Florida Gators, of course, yesterday landed Cormani McClain, get it? And Miami, you're poor. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets. With any winning $5 bet, it's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And like I mentioned, the Florida Gators landed Cormani McClain from the transfer portal yesterday. And I am going to continue to take the approach that I said I would take before he committed, when we were kind of like, okay, he's probably going to wind up here. That great to add a player with five-star talent, five-star ranking, whatever you want to call it, the athletic, physical traits that you can't teach. That height, that length, that speed, you can't teach it, but needs a lot of development and needs a lot of work. So it's great to land that kind of player with really no investment. And I've likened it to NFL teams spending a seventh round pick on an athletic player with physical traits, but has some off-field concerns and needs a lot of work done. It's the same thing. Very, very little investment put in terms of, for Florida, you didn't have to spend a scholarship on him because Cormani McClain is coming as a preferred walk-on, similar to how a seventh round pick, very little guaranteed money, not enough to convince an NFL team to stick with a bad option. So if Cormani doesn't work out, he's walk-on. Get rid of him. You don't have to worry about working around scholarships, right? So Florida landing Cormani McClain here is nothing short of it's extra credit, right? He's a preferred walk-on. If he doesn't work out, he doesn't work out. Get rid of him and call it quits. You tried your best. You gave him a second chance. Great. You did your part. And if it does work out, you look like a genius, but you can't really lose here. Because I know that a lot of people have that concern of, the character concerns. He's going to be a cancer to the locker room. No. There's levels to character concerns. Context matters, especially with character concerns. The character concerns that Cormani McClain realistically has, a lot of it comes down to two things. One, immature. Two, lazy. That's it. It doesn't really come down to he's a bad kid. It comes down to he's immature and he's lazy. He's got the work ethic concerns. He's got the work ethic complaints. Here's the thing. That's not the kind of thing that is really going to go to throughout the locker room. That's not, I keep seeing people go, it's contagious. It's not contagious. It's simply not. Like I've been on teams with people who don't work hard. It has not changed. The people who work hard are going to work hard. Okay? That's something ingrained in you that's not going to be influenced by someone being lazy near you. It's not. And so the people who are going to work hard are going to work hard. And also, as far as even if he did have attitude concerns that people were concerned about, that still doesn't bother me. And I've said it a billion times at this point. The Florida Gators and Billy Napier, for all of the deserved criticism that Billy Napier has received and will receive throughout his tenure in Gainesville, the culture that he's been building is good. Like he's been building a strong culture. Twitter, you may have half the fan base on any given day calling for his job. Sure. You may have half the fan base saying, no, give him, you need to give him at least another 3 years, whatever it is. Sure. Irrelevant to me, okay? Because I've spoken to a lot of players on this roster or throughout Billy Napier's tenure in Gainesville. I've spoken to a lot of players, and I haven't had a single, not one player go, yeah, the culture there is not good. Even players that have left the program, the complaints that they used to have were, development, strength and conditioning program, used to. I haven't had a single complaint about the culture. I'm not concerned about the culture of the Florida Gators football team. That is one thing that I don't care how you feel about Billy Napier's on-field coaching ability. Culture, not a concern in any way, shape, or form for me. It's just not. Okay? Like get that one out of your head about one bad kid is going to change. No. Because this culture was being built while Brenton Cox and Trey Dean were being not good teammates. Not good for the culture. This culture was still being built with that. Not concerned about it. For Cormani McClain on the field, I don't think he does much this year. There's two main reasons. One, he's 160 pounds or 165 pounds. Too light at 6'2", 6'3". 165 pounds, too light. Simple as that. And don't bring up, I know I say this all the time, don't bring up Devonta Smith to me. The exception, not the rule. He's an outlier. Don't bring up Emmanuel Forbes. Exception, not the rule. You can name two guys. One didn't even play the same position as Cormani. You can name two guys and you think that's like, all right, well, my justification's done. No, that's not how it works. Cormani McClain needs to gain weight to be effective at the SEC level. He had a 37.5% missed tackle rate in Colorado last year. Part of that is not having a ton of interest in tackling, which for me, you need to be willing and able to tackle, but I don't need you popping people. But part of that is that interest. Part of it is he's too light to be effective as a tackler. Got to put on a little bit of weight to be effective. And I'm not saying he needs to be 200. I'm saying if you can get to 175, 180, it's at least reasonable to be out there. But at 6'2", 165, that's really light. That is really thin. And that's terrifying to me. But also, and I've been saying this for a long time. I know people get upset every time I say it. I don't really care. If you want to go, rep for rep, we can go rep for rep and talk about Cormani there. But Cormani McClain coming out of high school is very raw. Technique-wise, very raw. Needs a lot of work there. And couldn't really hang in the Pac-12 playing like that. Can't hang in the SEC playing like that. Needs work, needs coaching, needs development. That's my biggest concern with Cormani McClain becoming a Florida Gator, is that he needs work, he needs development, he needs coaching, and he needs all that. He also needs to put in the effort and meet the coaches halfway there, because that's the laziness. Like, oh, you could be great. Not if you don't work hard. Hard work beats talent, and talent doesn't work hard. Never forget that, okay? So for Cormani McClain, you need to put in the work. I hope that you will have changed and you will put in the work. But that's one of the main reasons that I'm saying it's extra credit. I'm not getting even emotionally invested in this. If he doesn't work out, I'm not going to be disappointed. I have no expectations here. So if he doesn't work out, he doesn't work out. That is what it is. I'm not going to be upset about it. That's not something that I should be concerned with. So it's extra credit, but Cormani McClain is one of those low risk, high reward kind of plays and kind of players and kind of recruits that you bring in that, hey, could be big money. We are about to be joined by Brian Smith, Locked On's recruiting insider, to talk a commit, talk targets. But first, we're going to get a quick word from FanDuel. It is winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. All right? Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. And remember that FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. Joining me now for Locked On Gators is Brian Smith, Locked On's recruiting insider. And before we talk about Chad Gasper, I'd like to thank LinkedIn Jobs for being the official college football recruiting sponsor across the Locked On College Network. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. And Brian, Chad Gasper, the most recent Florida Gators commit, we talked about him a little bit a few weeks ago, maybe a little over a month ago at this point. But there was something when I watched his film, because again, I typically don't watch players' film until they commit, because I'm not going to waste my time watching that, because there's a lot of offers that go out for Florida and can only take so many. But when watching his film, I noticed he played out of the pistol a lot, and that was his high school, just their offense. A lot of it was out of pistol. And I was curious to see your take on this, because watching him come out of pistol, I texted an NFL running back that I know, and I asked the difference as a running back playing out of pistol, shotgun, under center. And basically he was like, hey, playing out of pistol's the hardest spot to run out of if you're a running back. You're taking the handoff from an uncomfortable position than usual. The quarterback being in front of you, you don't get to make many pre-snap reads there of the defense and what they're going to do. And so I was curious if that was kind of maybe a selling point on Chad Gasper to Billy Napier, where Billy Napier can watch the film and say, hey, we've seen this kid run out of pistol, so we know he's comfortable doing it. Bring him in, and it'll be an easier transition to the next level.
100%. You're going to be better at things that you've done before. And Gasper is being recruited by numerous programs despite playing in the pistol. And from my experience, the pistol's a great offense. It just takes time to acclimate, which, it's typical. Football is complex. But his film's really good. It's a Texas kid that stands out. Anytime you're really good in the state of Texas at the game of football, you're really good. I don't care what offense he plays in, by the way, because his athleticism is great in general, but this will make his transition faster. That's more important. I know Gator fans are tired of excuses and stuff with Napier's staff. Like, this kid come in and play. He's a really good football player, and he already kind of knows how to operate out of it. It's a win-win. So I'm sure Napier and his staff have said, hey, this is something that we do as well. You're going to fit in. Why would you not? It's an easy recruiting pitch for the Florida Gators.
Yeah, and with Chad Gasper's film, he also spent a bit of time playing slot out wide. He was moving around the formation a lot. Does that pass catching ability really open the door further to contribute from day one as a true freshman, or are we still trying to, see how you kind of acclimate to the college level there?
Every coach has their own opinion on it, but it's the same thing you and I talked about on this show. The receiving part is actually part 3. You got to be able to run the ball as a running back. The second one is, can you pass block? Because even if the play's a run and if the quarterback checks to a pass, if he can't block for you, things could go sideways for your entire season really quick when your quarterback's ribs get crushed. That's the bigger thing. I don't care what formation you're in, you got to be able to understand protection. So that is a nightmare. I think the ability to catch is something that's obvious. His high school wouldn't put him out there if he didn't do well. So that's already a bonus. It's established. It'll help him get on the field, but it's still the pass protection that Billy or anybody else is going to want to see.
Yeah, I would like to point out that we are heading into year 3 of Billy Napier, and we have not seen a single running back be good in pass protection. Just want to throw that out there. Like, that's the thing for me where I love running backs in pass pro.
That is not a good sign. Not a good sign.
Nope.
I'm a little concerned about that.
Yeah, I watched Trevor Etienne give up a sack against Charlotte in pass protection. That was really fun to watch. Georgia's gonna love that coming from him. But with Florida adding Chad Gasper, now they're done at running back for the 2025 cycle. They've got their guys. What do you think of the, assuming that they stay with the class, what do you think of the running back tandem of Waltez Clark and Chad Gasper for the Florida Gators future running back room?
For anybody that's not seen the most recent running back, Waltez is a taller, longer kid. I'm not saying he's Eric Dickerson, but like his frame is built like that. I think that you're looking at a really good running back that's coming from Texas that fits the mold of what they've had recently. really good sharp cuts in traffic. He's going to bounce off guys. He makes the cuts even after contact and keeps his speed. Really strong core and hips. He's a traditional running back that's a power player, but he's good enough to catch the ball in space. Waltez is a long strider. I don't think he's a guy that is necessarily as natural a running back. At one point, he was playing edge at playing high school. Maybe he still does some. He's just a really good football player. They're probably going to be different running styles. He's a little longer in his motion. I don't know if he'll be as nimble in space, but once he hits the crease, he can really go. And he's a powerful kid that likes contact. If there's one similarity, again, it is the physicality. Billy's, if they're going to say anything about Billy, people complain about him. He does not shy away from playing physical football, and Florida fans should love that. They should be able to play downhill. It's what Urban did when they were really good. They were up front and they were powerful. This is the kind of kids that he would have liked to. So I think they will complement each other well. They are different builds. They are different styles. They'll be good to go at the running back spot. Florida fans should be happy about this duo.
Yeah, I do have to ask which running back you think would be more ready to play from day one, because they are such stark difference stylistically.
If I had to pick, I'd say Gasper, but I mean, that's like 6 one way, half dozen the other. I just think the way he's built, I'm guessing that he will be a little better in pass pro, but as a general rule, there's one guarantee with freshman running backs. They stink at pass protection. So I don't know. Waltez, I also say that because they could still end up playing him at linebacker, whatever. He's one of the most versatile players in the state of Florida. He's really good. I'm just not sure running back's going to be where he ends up, and that's okay. It's okay to take a guy that can play strong safety, could play nickels, linebacker, play will, whatever. He's a good football player, so that'll take care of itself in time. Waltez Clark's really good.
We're going to spend the rest of the time talking about tight ends. Wanted to talk about one that's committed elsewhere in Caden Peoning, tight end committed to UCF right now. It's been a long while since we've last talked about him. What do you think of his film?
This is a kid that fits a lot of what Gus does at UCF. He can play H-back. He can play in the slot. He uses tight ends a lot in his offensive scheme, a lot of RPO. Catches well, makes plays after the catch. Not necessarily a burner. He would be at the SEC level, I think he's the perfect number 2. That's what I was in. Again, as I mentioned a moment ago, UF does a tremendous job with power football. That's the one thing. Like, I love their run scheme. They do a really good job with it. They use tight ends pretty well with it. This is a kid that, like, you look at his frame when you watch him run, whether he's blocking, whether he's catching, whatever. Okay, this looks like a tight end. He kind of fits the profile. And he's an athletic kid. They'll use him in motion. They'll put him in the slot to be the blocker on a screen. There's no doubt. And he plays in Cincinnati. He's a kid that's played against pretty good competition. He's not going to struggle. The only question I have with him is which one will he play the most? Because he might even be a guy you put in the backfield to help a pass pro some, do different things. I don't know which spot he'll play the most, but he's a really good football player, and I'm not surprised that Florida's recruiting him.
Yeah, I do have to ask also, with how much stock do you really think goes into the head-to-head matchup this year for Florida and Central Florida? Because we're at a recruitment where it's pretty much, I think the general consensus is that it's pretty much down to these two schools. It's either he's going to stick with UCF or he's going to flip to Florida. So in terms of Florida's side of things, when you're trying to flip a kid, how much does it really come down to the head-to-head battle where it's just these two schools will face each other? Florida had a couple of head-to-head battles late last year, and they lost the Arkansas one, but won the commitment by getting Jaden Baugh there. But how do you think that plays in for Caden Peoning?
If UCF beats Florida, I think it's more important for them, because that might also be a good reason that Billy Napier is no longer in Gainesville. I'm going to go out on a limb here. Florida fans will lose their mind if UCF wins that game. Obviously, I'm just stating the obvious. I know recently said you thought Billy would be back kind of regardless after this year. He may or may not, but if they lose that UCF game, that'll have different kind of ramifications. I have no idea who's going to win. I wouldn't touch either one of those programs with a 10-foot pole right now in predictions, but that's why that game's a little unique. The two schools hate each other. The fan bases hate each other more. That's an important game. Now, this is an out-of-state kid, so he doesn't see it from the same lens like I did. I lived in the greater Orlando area. I've covered UCF, etc. The hatred is real. But UF is still the standard in the state in terms of tradition. It's the SEC program. It's the flagship institution. So they would have a lot to sell. But I don't know. If Florida wins, maybe that helps them. It might be one of the reasons that Billy does keep his job. So this game might have a little more impact than what it would normally.
And I'm just curious here that it's not necessarily Caden Peoning specific or anything like that, but UCF is officially a Power 4 school, which I'm never going to get used to saying Power 4, but officially a Power 4 school after joining the Big 12 last season. But I feel like every time we talk about recruitment or just head-to-head matchups, anything it is, they're still universally looked at as little brother to all of the big three Florida schools at this point. And again, this is not necessarily Florida specific, but how does UCF kind of change that perception, both on the recruiting trail and actually just on the field?
Well, first you got to win. I think the second part of that, from what I'm told, and this may not be accurate, but that their NIL packages just are not comparable with UF, etc. That's something that like Malzahn and his staff can only work so hard. Eventually they need a booster that's just that guy. Miami has one, etc. That is so rich that funding's great in getting some, the $20,000 donations, but they need the guy that can write 7-figure checks. It's just true. Not just for getting kids that are recruits and stuff, but the maintaining of players so they don't transfer. That's the key. That is not a friendly discussion, but that's one that's very important.
Yeah, UCF is. I feel like Gus Malzahn's always having them in the race for offense with players, but like at a certain point, I think you got to go, hey, maybe a little bit of defense. Help us.
They can't get the key defensive guys. They've gotten a lot of good athletes, but they're not getting elite defensive players by and large. So they're a step behind.
And then the last player that we're going to talk about today is Micah Jones. And we've never talked about Micah Jones before. What's your opinion of his play?
Wow, what an athlete. He's from Madison Central in Mississippi. It's a program that's very well known in the Magnolia State. When he goes up and catches a pass, you say, not only is he a tight end, he's like the prototypical NFL frame. Like he's already, when he walks up and he's standing at the line, you're like, wow, this is the kind of guy you want on your squad. Ole Miss really wants him. This just in, whether you dislike him or not, Lane Kiffin knows offense. There's a reason. And like the arm length and all that. This is a kid that if he wanted to put on weight could play tackle, but like he's athletic, bounces off guys like a pinball. He's really talented. Wherever he ends up, he's going to play pretty early. That physically, God blessed him a little differently than most kids. So he reminds me of guys that have played the NFL. So I think his future, it doesn't really matter where he goes, as long as he stays healthy and stays out of trouble. He's going to get paid one day. Humongous frame, great hands, has length, powerful, has good footwork in open space. He's what you're looking for.
For Micah Jones, I mean, this feels like one of those recruitments where I get to kind of make fun of the recruiting services a little bit, just a little bit, because he's pretty much universally a 3-star tight end or 3-star.
He is not a 3-star recruit.
Yep. And then you look at the offer list and Florida, LSU, Ole Miss, Alabama, Arkansas, Missouri, a ton of SEC programs are pretty heavily involved here. And it feels like it's going to come down to Florida, LSU, Ole Miss here. But yeah, this is just one of my favorite recruitments where we get to go, okay, gonna trust the guys getting paid multiple millions of dollars in terms of evaluating this player.
He's at a random program in Mississippi. And for whatever reason, even though like 24/7 and On 3 are based out of Nashville, those guys don't go down in that state. It's a pain to scout Mississippi because there's like 1 or 2 kids at each high school. Scouts want everybody at one field at one time. That's why the 7-on-7 events and the Under Armour camps and all that are pop. But the state of Mississippi is completely under-scouted. It's a running joke in our industry. That's what's going on. If that kid lived in Orlando, he'd be a 4-star recruit. Period. It's that simple.
Yeah, I feel like this is another one of those kids where every year we have, even going back to when we had John Garcia here, and now we have you, and it's like every year we talk about Mississippi kids, and every year it's, hey, yeah, Mississippi's one of the most, it's like one of the most productive states in
Oh, it's
terms of
insane.
player per capita.
It's top 10 in the nation for NFL talent pretty much every year. What does that tell you? But again, there's one kid, it's like, it's annoying to scout. There's no financially lucrative way to do it, and that's all these companies care about. That's why everybody tends to live in Georgia and Florida. It's in the recruiting industry, or at least they have a hub in one of those spots. So it is what it is.
And then with Micah Jones, he's expected to commit some point this July. Florida is the only school right now that has an official visit set, because he's supposed to be in Gainesville basically 2 weeks from today now. LSU probably getting an official visit. Ole Miss probably getting an official visit here. How do the Gators better position themselves here, where since it's a summer commitment, you can't really say the go win some games argument, which is I feel like for most recruits, it's Florida needs to perform better on the field. But here, you have until July to at least land the initial commitment. Of course, we know things will change over time by signing day.
I think it's just relationship. That's all it is, Brandon. It's relationships. You have to find a way to make this kid feel comfortable. And of course, your objective is on the official visits to do that. But I also want to mention something I like to reiterate quite often. Not what they say, it's what they do. Does he take any unofficials anywhere else? Like, obviously it's convenient to go to LSU or Ole Miss compared to Florida. If UF got him to take an unofficial visit as well, that would be a really good sign. If he takes one to the other schools and doesn't, you know what I mean? Like, just read the tea leaves. Because, again, you're right. He's not going to get to see Florida play before the decision. So unless the relationship is just really strong with the Gators staff, I'd imagine he'll end up at Ole Miss or LSU because those are easier picks. They're closer. But Florida's an easy sell, too. So Florida had a lot of really good recruits the last couple of years when they weren't playing good. So I wouldn't be shocked if they got him.
Yeah, Florida just, for some reason, always in it. And we know that even if they don't land that initial commitment, they're a pesky staff. Like, they'll be constantly in.
They do a good job with it. They do.
Yeah. And once they win, like they win their first game of the year against Miami, and I promise you they'll be like, hey, Micah, we won games. Just so you know, we're putting wins on the field. But thank you so much, Brian. This was Brian Smith, Locked On's recruiting insider. Catch him every week on Locked On College Network and every day with Locked On Seminoles, as mad as that makes you all. But thank you, Brian.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day, we are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast. We'll be back tomorrow, probably going to talk some Elijah Badger. For Locked On Gators, I am Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with Giants Country and NFL 33, and I will see you all next time.